Thank you so much, Emma. And thank you for everyone joining us for our last session on this month's topic, which is independent living. We are very, very lucky to be joined by Dr. Ruth Bailey, who for the last 15 years has taught social science subjects to level 1 students at the Open University. Previously working in the information professional with the Citizens Advice Service and disabled-led organisations. However, in her well-spent youth, was a disability activist, campaigning for accessible transport and civil rights legislation. I bet you've got some really good stories there, Ruth. And we have come a long way, but as she quite rightly says, there is still a long way to go. So as Emma said and Ruth said, fire questions and open discussions through the talk this evening, and it is my complete pleasure to invite Ruth to open this evening's speaker session. Thank you.
Okay, so I've prepared a few slides, mainly just to remind myself what I thought I might say. So I think, are you going to put the slides up for me?
Yeah, I'm going to do that now.
When we talk. So basically, I'm going to talk about working with personal assistants. And if we go on to one slide.
Yeah, I'm just starting it.
Yeah.
Slideshow. Okay, bear with me. Technical hitch. I know what I'm doing.
Maybe while we're
just start that one again.
While we're overcoming a hitch, how many people work with PAs or carers at the moment? I can see Georgia does.
Yeah, I have. And I'm trying to do a template of recruiting a PA. I'm in the middle of it, but I'm stuck at the moment of what to write down.
All right, well, maybe we can look at that a bit later. That was Sarah, wasn't it? You were talking about that.
Yeah,
yeah. So do you employ your own PAs?
No, I have carers on site, so I have like care workers that are giving me as my care package.
Right.
And luckily I've got carers on site because there's 8 bungalows.
Right.
Semi-detached bungalows, and they're full of people, and they are predominantly neurological disabilities like MS, brain injury, and cerebral palsy. But I want somebody that could do a bit more, like go out at night and that, and where.
Yeah, going out at night is important.
Yeah, so I'm not getting any of that.
Yay. Well, hopefully we do join in the discussion, and hopefully I might give you a few ideas.
Well, can I have a recording of this when it's finished?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay. Carry on.
So I've employed PAs for the last 30 years, but it doesn't make me an expert in independent living by any stretch of the imagination. I've made loads of mistakes over the past 30 years. And a personal assistant, there's a reason why it's called personal, and that is it's about two individuals working together. So what works for one person may not work for somebody else, even if you've got very similar levels of needs. And I know when I was first starting out, I used to listen to people who were in those days were very much pioneers talking about working with PA. I thought, oh, I can never do that. So I realized I didn't want to put anyone off, because I can only just say what works for me, and I do have tendencies to tell a few stories about what's going on, but that's probably all down to my former world wars, and nothing much else. So just to give you those caveats to start with. Okay, so we go on. Yeah. So what is my setup? So I have a direct payment from my local authority. So that means they assess me as needing X number of hours care a week, and I opt to get that care in the form of money into my bank account. And then it's my responsibility to arrange my care. Now, I should say that Camden do check that I use that money in a legitimate way. And when direct payments were originally set up in the mid-90s, a lot of local authorities were really paranoid that disabled people were going to get all this money in their bank account, and they might, go on these really expensive holidays to Barbados or whatever. What they hadn't worked out is that we wouldn't be able to get to Barbados because we needed that money just to get out of bed. But it was, it was definitely, I sat in meetings when I was like really encouraging Camden that they should go for this. And they would say outright, well, we don't know what we're gonna do. You might misuse the money. And I think the reason why they enabled me to have them in the end was just because it was a way of getting me off their back, because
Mhm.
I was I was using their home care scheme, and there were just so many problems with that I was bringing them up with problems. So I thought, oh well, if we give this to Ruth, just shut her up for a bit. So my care package, I get funding at the moment for 72 hours a week. And that's quite a generous package by today's standards. And the reason for that is I originally got funding from something called the Independent Living Fund. So I haven't written that out either. And this was a very good fund set up in the late 80s. And it was actually, that was the first way in which disabled people got cash payments to organise their own care. And because they had quite a lot of discretion about what they could fund in terms of what assistance, they actually recognised that disabled people needed support to go out and have a life in the community. Like you were saying, so going out at night and having a good time. So there was a certain amount of that in their budget, in the budgets they gave to users. And when the ILF was wound down, I can't close, that's the right word, cut. Um, I can't remember now when that was. I think it was in 2000s. Anyway, my local authority didn't have to, but they agreed to keep funding the same hours that the ILF had given me. So I was quite fortunate of that. So I get funding for 72 hours a week. And the way that I organise that is I have a team of 5 people that I employ directly, so they're my employees. So they cover morning, lunch, and evening during the week, and I stay around for the whole of the weekend, not overnight, but during the day. And that's really to enable me to do whatever I fancy to do on the weekends. So that's what really gives me flexibility. In terms of what my PAs do, it's a whole range of tasks. So I need assistance with um more or less all aspects of personal care, and I also need assistance around the house with getting food, with cutting up food, with cooking food, washing laundry. So basically all the domestic chores I need help with. And I also need help to actually do my job. So there's a lot. Obviously, I can do the intellectual work of my job. I do need assistance sometimes typing and just reading books and all other sort of little things. So there's a whole range of things I need help with. Oh, and thank you, Dean. 2015. Yes, it was George Osborne, I think, that had the bright idea of cutting it. So I have 5 direct employees. So one of the first things you have to decide, I suppose, when you're employing PAs is thinking about developing a rota. So what time do you want them to come on what days? And then thinking about who's going to cover which shift. There's quite a lot of work you have to go through, and it's really a question of trial and error. And one thing which might coming on to, this is very much ad lib, so do rein me back in if I go off, please. I mean, to an extent, you, all my PAs have the same basic skill set, but beyond that, some PAs are better at typing than others. Some PAs are, are really great and going out, not so good if I need to have the gun. So well, in my view, they all need core skills, but you also have to play to their strengths as well, but not to the extent that you compromise your own needs. So this is something we'll keep coming back to, this relationship between between me and PAs. So I have 5 direct employees at the moment, and I also have an agency to cover 3 mornings a week. Now, the reason I use the agency, although they're vastly more expensive than employing somebody directly, they have responsibility to find somebody if one of their workers goes sick. So having the agency 3 mornings a week is just a really good insurance policy that whatever else is going on with the rest of my PAs, and I've got 3 shifts a week, 3 mornings a week, which are my most important, when I don't have to worry that somebody else's responsibility. And during the pandemic, I was very glad that I had that in place, because there were some quite hairy times and it was very difficult. I had one of my workers was stranded in Serbia for 3 months, and people were going down with COVID. So it was a very scary time for all of us. But having that agency cover 3 mornings a week was a real godsend. As it was more recently, when I broke my leg. Because when that happened, my knee changed very suddenly, and I went from needing the assistance of one to transfer to needing a hoist, which means two people. So the fact that I had an ongoing relationship with an agency meant that I was very quickly and able to put in place that extra care. So it meant that I didn't get stuck in hospital for weeks, trying to negotiate with Camden to provide something, or trying to recruit people myself. So that agency cover 2 mornings a week is like my little insurance policy. It's just something that I don't have control over, which is actually quite helpful in those circumstances. So that's my setup with my PAs. Okay, any thoughts or questions? No? Okay.
Yeah, I have questions.
Go on, Sarah.
I've got loads of questions.
All right.
First of all, I have my own carers. No, I don't have my own, but they are part of the package that I have. I have 60 hours a week. But then I also have a night carer who stays with me overnight because I'm on a breathing machine.
Right.
So, and the other the care company that does my personal assistance with feed and all that, they don't have anything to do with that.
Right.
But what they're saying is, because I have a full package anyway, the same hours as you, and plus I can go out a bit on my own, but I couldn't do what I wanted without those carers. They're only granting me 5 hours.
Or 5 hours
a week.
A week.
Yes.
So that's on top of the pay you get in your
I don't get the pay.
Right.
Because I have a big package that I have night carers as well.
Yeah, but actually, the size it's not the size of the package that matters. It's your needs, isn't it?
But and also the same, because I can go out on my own basically, and go out in the summer on my own because I don't need any coats, so I'm not restricted. And plus, I have a catheter, and I have to get back at a certain time, to go to the loo. So I'm restricted in a lot of ways. But they just say, because you can do this, you're not going to get a massive PA package.
It sounds to me, well, first we need to talk about quality of life, because it might, yes, you might be able to go out a bit on your own, but if you can't go out for an evening because it's raining, well, that restricts your quality of life, but it also restricts your rights. You should be able to go out like other people go out.
Yeah, I agree, but that I'm on CHC, continuing healthcare.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, I'm on continuing healthcare because of my respiratory condition. But anyway, so that's it. Any grateful information on how to, plus I don't get, if the money I'm getting for it, I'm having one of them packages where they pay your what's the word, income tax, they do holiday pay,
yeah,
they do all that for you, and you just declare each month.
Yeah, we'll come on to that. So, being an employer. Okay, what's next, Miriam? I can't remember. Yeah, what? This is it. Why be an employer? So, being an employer, as I will come to, is a bit of a responsibility. So, why be an employer? And really, Sarah's demonstrated some of that. So, for me, you'll notice I put more in brackets because everything is relative, nothing is absolute. But for me, being employed means I I get freedom over who comes into my house because I employ the people I want. I can decide who comes into my house. I can set the terms of the relationship. And so, although there are many complexities in the relationship between PA and PA user, setting the terms of the relationship is quite a handy power to have. It's not everything, but it's really pretty useful. So, well, for me, it is. I have to say that about everything. For me, I find that really useful. And also, it means that I can say how I like things tasks done because we're all different. We all run our home in different ways. We all like our coffee made in well, different ways. We all like to be helped in different ways. I think for me, particularly around personal care, I'm very particular about how I want to son. So by being an employer, when somebody starts working with me, I invest a lot of time in training that person and talking to that person so they get to know what I like and my expectations. The expectations is an important word there because it's not about dictating to someone you must do it like this, but it's about setting my expectations about what my likes and dislikes are, what my preferences are, is perhaps the best way of putting it. So more freedom over my assistants and more flexibility, you know, with the relationship that I develop with my PAs, and I'm lucky I've got a good bunch of PAs, but I can say, well, I've got loads of work on, can you come a bit early because I need to get up and do that, or I'm going to be out late, so can you come a bit later the next morning? So, and I can also say sometimes, if you've got friends around or whatever, you can just say, well, can you go away for an hour or so because I've got stuff to do. So it just gives me a lot more flexibility. And I can ask people to take me from me. Say to people, right, I want to go to the theatre. Will you enable me to do it? So whatever the trials and tribulations of being an employer, and there are quite a few, there's a payoff for me in terms of freedom and flexibility. Okay, Miriam. So this is what I was talking about. It's a relationship. And these slides are very rough and ready. I apologize. But I was trying to sort of think about the different dimensions of this relationship. So, as I said, I'm the employer, they're the employee. That has a whole level of expectation that if you're an employee, you work your employer's job description, how they want things done. So that's important. But equally, if you're an employee, you've got certain rights. If you're an employee, you might be disgruntled. So there's always a to and froing is what I'm trying to get at here. So there's employer, employee. And then there's the fact that I always say to my PA when they start working with me, is I expect to instruct them about what I want done and how I want it done. So that's a bit that can be unusual to some people who are used to working in for example a care agency, although it's less unusual than it used to be. But again, there's something there about being an instructor, and I think it's interesting because if you're giving people instructions, the person you're instructing nonetheless has to have enough confidence to be able to say, Ruth, I don't know what you're on about. So it's a bit unusual in that way. But again, that's one of the qualities that I think is critical, is that they've got to have that confidence. Because I need to know that if I said something stupid or something that doesn't make sense, that they can tell me that. And actually, there was an example, I, I like my story, but there was an example the other week, and it was a critical one where I have a very close friend with epilepsy. He was having an epileptic seizure, and we had to prevent him falling. So I needed the PA to do something very particular with the cushion. And I didn't realise that my instruction to move the cushion was totally ambiguous. So it wasn't until we unpicked that later that I realised that was the issue. Was partly my instruction weren't clear, and she didn't quite have the confidence in that high pressure situation to say to me, I don't understand what you're telling me to do. So there's, after 30 years, there's always learning, and I never get it totally right, but it's always a work in progress.
Ruth, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So you've been employing PAs for 30 years, you said, and you come across incredibly confident, and your communication, as in working out whose responsibility is what, is really phenomenal. But are you able to take us back to how you were when you first started? Because I think that employer-employee relationship is quite an art in itself, isn't it?
Yes. I found it incredibly difficult, which is why I wanted to emphasize that I've got 30 years of experience and I don't know it all. And I think I made a big mistake in thinking that if you're the employer, you're in control. And it's not quite that simple. It's not like you can always get your own way. You have to develop that ability of give and take. And that really does take a lot of experience. I mean, I'm the grand old age of 60. I'm just about feeling more confident with that now. But it is a very tricky one. And I mean, talking to disabled people is always a good way to get some tips. And actually, in the 90s and the noughties, there were a lot more disabled people organisations around, who were offering support to disabled people to be employers. So I think it is more difficult nowadays for younger people coming up. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it isn't easy, and it's a lifetime work. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
So and yeah, so going on from that, the carey and the carer, what do I mean by that? I don't know. Something about I have to recognise, one has to recognise that I am dependent on the other person, and that brings with it certain dynamics. There's certain things that I have to suck it up, I think is the phrase that some people use. And again, that's taken a while for me to know. But and also I've one of my interests or whatever is about how another human being can help me with physical tasks, because they don't feel my body, I do. So it's that sort of thing that I have to recognize that I'm on the end of being cared for, and that's got certain limitations and certain interesting dynamics. So that's that one. It's a relationship. I mean, I was saying earlier about, sometimes I go out with my peers, and sometimes we're hanging out together. They're workers also. How do I manage that one? How do they manage that one as well? Because I might go from just hanging out together to telling them, right, you got to do this. So how do they negotiate that one? And I suppose in the end, the relationship that works best is if you're both professional collaborators. So you don't both treat each other with that respect. You both recognise it's a collaborative relationship. It's working together to make something that's better than two individuals could do. I suppose they just had their own mind. So I think these might become clearer if we go to the next slide. So I was thinking about relationships and boundaries. So it's recognizing these things like my home space is their workspace. So, we treat home and work differently. So there's different expectations going on there. And, I have to remember that, but equally, I need people to think, oh yeah, it's Ruth's space, she really cares about that, so I've got to do it that way. But these are things you just keep working out. Like, my social life is their workouting. So this, I mean, when, for example, I go out for a meal, or I go to see family, or I go to the theatre, I will brief my PA as to what I want them to do. So sometimes I'll just want them to leave me. Sometimes I want them to be there, but not get involved in the conversation. Because if I'm meeting a friend, if all the time I want to involve a PA in the conversation, that does limit the terms of your friendship sometimes, because it means there's a whole lot of things you have to discuss. Or maybe that just says something about my friendships. I don't know. But, sometimes, particularly if I need a hand whether I'm going out for a meal, I need a hand with eating. But I'll say to people, just give me the space here, you help me, but don't get involved with the conversation. And I also say that to my friends as well, so they know what's going on. I mean, it's not an easy situation. There are times when that makes me feel uncomfortable because, I like including people in conversations and sociable and so forth. But, it's through experience that I've learned that I need to do that for myself. And also with family, it's quite interesting that to start with, I probably want a new parent to have a really backseat role when it comes to my family. But as they get to know me, they get to know my family, and then it's a different situation. So again, it's this continuing working out of the boundaries. I just need a sip of my water.
Ruth, would it be all right if Katie asks her question now?
Yeah, that's great.
It's not a question, but a comment.
Good.
I would just like to say Thomas Payment is one for everyone.
I didn't catch the end of that, Katie.
I would just like to say Thomas Payment is one for everyone.
Yeah, that is a good point. Have you considered it? Have you experienced it?
Yeah, my local authority are pushing it, but I find it too much paperwork and mum wants her own life now, so I don't want her to help me because she's done it for 20 years.
Yeah. I think that's a very important point. It has to be if you want it, but also if they're pushing it, I want to, just think too well. If they're pushing it, what money are they going to give me to give me the support I need to make it work for me? Because under
Can they say there's no support there? They can only do certain things and others need more than what they're offering. Like, I wouldn't be able to do all the paperwork myself because it's too much and organize all the training, and that's what they're saying.
You see, this is what happens when governments don't give local authority enough money. Because in the original direct payments legislation, and that was passed in the 90s, it does say that local authorities got to give disabled people the money to be able to be good employers. They've got to provide funding for disabled people organisations to enable and support disabled people being employers. But unfortunately, these things have all gone by the wayside. And now local authorities just see, well, one way of looking at direct payments, if I'm cynical, is that it's just another form of privatisation. It's making the disabled person do what the local authority used to do, way back in the 80s, where it would provide home care for people. So you're right, it doesn't work for everyone. And also, it was much easier for me way back in the 90s than it is for you people coming out now. You know, and I don't like having to say that, you know, but that unfortunately is true. Is I think true, but I mean that's a political point that I would say that.
Thank you, Ruth. Dean, did you want to ask your question as well?
Yes. Well, it wasn't a question. It's like Casey. It's a comment. And as I'm hearing you speak, Ruth, you remind me of a friend of mine, an old friend of mine who's sadly no longer with us. And she was the first recipient to benefit from the ILF when it began. And like basically some other things that you say. So for example, the first thing was that, you know, when your friends are with you, it's important that the PA doesn't get involved in that because you want to have time with your friends. So how Susie used to deal with that, she used to say, because she had 24-hour care, so she used to say, well, to her PAs, well, Dean's here or whoever's here, you go and do your own thing, you know, in you know, either do some jobs in the kitchen or do some jobs that need doing, or if you've finished your jobs, just go and, you know, go on the computer or something like that in your room, which was the PA's room, just have a bit of time to yourself. But the other thing as well, another thing as well, is about who gets involved. And Susie kind of made a mistake, which she said she made a mistake. I'm not saying she made a mistake. She actually began, and when she began, one of the first employers, and it didn't last for very long for all kinds of reasons, was a mother. And a mother's a lovely person, but your family are not the right people. Susie said,
Are you okay? Can you come here, please?
Susie said that, you know, really should never have got involved. So it was a bit difficult for Susie's mum to accept the fact that, you know, that there were barriers, there had to be boundaries because she was a mum. And, you know, and that's why, as I say, that's why members of your family should never be, you know, should never get that involved in terms of you. Susie says that, not me. She said that's why your family should never get involved in you know, in so much within your package, because things can conflict. You know, there can be conflicts of interest, and you know, I just thought I'd mention that to you, and it's very interesting to hear what you have to say, Ruth. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Just say, Sarah, I can see you put stuff in the chat. I'll have a look at the end. I will send you a job description. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think, Dean, you're right. I've forgotten what the latest thing is in the legislation about employing family members. I think I can't remember what it says, but I know it's always a topic of debate because there's potential for exploitation on all sides in that one. So I think particularly if one family member has been involved in providing care for free, and then you go to pay them, that is a very different thing to negotiate. I'm sure for some people it works brilliantly, but again, it's it's boundaries, having to reset the boundaries and having to think about how the power shifts in different situations. So yeah, it's complicated is what I'm trying to say, I think. So thank you. Yeah. So just some more of these boundaries that have been things that I've had to work out. I mean, my right to confidentiality to their right to know. I suppose I'm a very private person. I've been schooled in the social model of disability that says impairment isn't important. So I used to find it difficult telling people what my impairment and medical history were, because I didn't think they needed to know that in order to be able to support me. But I've changed my mind now. I've recognised that there are situations when it's useful to me that they know, and that actually they can find it helpful. It just gives them another way to think about what's going on for me. So all these boundaries keep shifting. But obviously confidentiality is a huge area, because as I say to people, you know, they get to know everything about me because they're in my home, they help me with finance and whatever. So you have to think quite carefully about that. And talking about who you employ, I went through a period where I employed people who were living on the same estate as me, and that had some brilliant positives, but it also had some negatives in terms of what I felt like I lost control over what my neighbours knew about me, and that felt difficult at the time. Had upside, but that was downsides. My right to ask and their right to say no, that covers a lot of different things. But I guess I put it there because I wanted to let you know that my plays do a lot of things for me over the years. And I mean, one of them is I was talking to you earlier about my friend with epilepsy. So they've really supported me in helping him. But I can ask them to do things, and they can say, "Oh no, that's above and beyond the call of duty," and yet other people will say yes. Also, both my parents, thankfully at different times, had dementia, so I wanted to be actively involved in caring for them, not physically, but being with them. So that involved some very complicated dynamics. And I needed to know I could ask people things and they would feel comfortable to say no, otherwise I wouldn't ask it to them. Does that make sense? It's only because I knew they would say no that I could ask them anyway. So, and I got into some really, really interesting situations with that. And I'll just tell you one story. So this is when I pushed it too far. I had this brilliant PA. She'd been moving for ages, knew my mum really well. Mum was in a difficult situation. Somebody had to stay with her overnight. So I said, "Oh, Heather, will you come down and stay with me and Mum?" And she said yes. And it was all going swimmingly till my mum ended up on the floor at 4 o'clock in the morning. I was in the room in my chair. My PA was upstairs. And I thought I'd been clever and taken her phone number into the room so I could ring her, but I hadn't figured that I wouldn't be able to see the bit of paper with the number on. I tried to put the light on and I shut the door by mistake. So I was now in a situation where I couldn't ring them, I couldn't open the door. And at that moment, my mum fell on the floor. So that was the moment I thought, I've gone too far here. This is not something I should have volunteered to do. So, sometimes I do get it wrong. But the fact that, this PA was, and most of my PAs did a really brilliant job in supporting me with that was, something I'll be forever grateful for. So it was really enabling. And also I have to say that Camden were very good because with their funding, they did provide additional funding to enable me to care for my mother. So that was really nice that I had that opportunity to caring not physically but caring mentally and emotionally, which was really important to me. So finally, my body, my way, their moving and handling. This is always a complex one. I'm sure Miriam can tell you more about this, but yeah, there's a difficult dynamic about explaining how I need to lay out. And obviously, I don't want them to injure themselves, but what if I have to do something what I don't like so they don't injure themselves? It's all a question of negotiating those boundaries. And that gets really complicated when you're in a hospital, etc., etc. So, here we go to the next slide. I have no idea what the time is. Oh, it's up at 7.
Yeah.
So, skills of a good PA. So these are things we've been talking about. You've got to have confidence. They've got to have communication skills. They've got to be able to talk to you, but they've also, for those of us with speech impairments, they've got to be really hot on being able to understand us, and that brings up issues when you're trying to recruit people. If we go a bit further on, because I'm aware of the time. Go on again, I think. So I was talking about being a good employer. So, if you the extent to which you can be a good employer means you get better employees, because if they're happy, they're more likely to stick around. So my advice is use a payroll company. Now, I think, again, I hope local authorities do have to provide enough money in budgets to enable you to use a payroll company to work out all the tax and national insurance, because that is a real nightmare. You have to, even though you use a payroll company, it's your responsibility to actually put money in the bank account. And whatever else happens, you've got to do that promptly and never bring money into like any other issue you're having with the person. You've got to, being a good employer is a responsibility, but you do have to sometimes separate it off from anything else that's going on. So get insurance, that is a requirement. Buy a filing cabinet. You do have to keep rooms papers, and you do have to keep them for 6 years. So it takes up quite a lot of space. So okay, if we go on room recruitment, yes, I will share my job description with you, Sarah. Recruitment is always difficult, and it got easier when we started to use email, because then you can have much easier to have conversations. But post Brexit, it's become very, very difficult, and you always have to make compromise. And when I'm recruiting, I'm always thinking, how is this job going to work for the other person? Because if you're making them do something that they don't want to, like getting to you at 7 o'clock in the morning, they're not going to stick at it. So a lot of my questions are interview about how is this going to fit with your responsibilities? How will we get here? Because I want to know that it's realistic for them, because they're not realistic for me. So, okay. Things that have gone wrong for me. Yeah, loads of things have gone wrong for me. People don't turn up. That happens thousands of times. And there's no simple answer. You know, use other PAs. I've got family who in the extreme will help me. But it, there's no, at the end of the day, we're all human beings, and they can be lots of really legitimate reasons why people can't make it. So, that you have to sort of just be mentally prepared for that, I guess. I mean, I still find it difficult to cope with, but you just have to think, okay, I'm going to get through this. What am I going to do? So, this I've had several workers recently who've done, like, handing their notices by text, which makes me quite cross, but, it's the way of the world. So that's happened. But you just have to, hope that people around you will support you, and that's it, really. And, it does happen that we don't get on. I am quite an intolerant person in lots of ways, so, it does happen. You just have to work ways through it, I find. So, okay, I think that's my last of 5 tips. And you'll notice there's only 4 of them. That's because I can't count. So I think you do have to put yourself first. You do have to remember that your PAs are there to support you. So yeah, you have to make compromises, but it has to work for you. Be a good employer, but get lots of support to enable you to do that. Magic happens when you're open and honest. The number of times that I thought, oh, this is a really difficult situation, I don't know how to deal with it. And you have a conversation and think, oh yeah, person's got the answer anyway. So you just have to be open and honest, which didn't come easily to me, but it works. And always be willing to change as your life changes, as your PA changes. It's not, oh, I've got this cracked, I'm going to do this till I'm 85. It's organic. So, thank you very much for listening to my ramblings.
That was so interesting. Thank you so much. So much useful information to take in, and it's great to hear it from a personal perspective as well, because it makes it really real.
Yeah.
So it's about 20. Sarah, was that you?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, sure. I was going to say, just to give Ruth a time check, it's 20 to 8. So we've got about 20 minutes for some questions. And Sarah, you're already there, so far away.
Right. If I ask for a PA for a driver, because I wanted to, if we go out late, that she's going to get home and she can drop me off at my house and then go on in a car. And so that gives me a bit of a extended, you know, that she can work with me outside and not worry having to get a bus home at, you know, 11 o'clock. Or do they need to have business tax, like a road tax? Are we supposed to?
So I can't answer that because my PAs don't drive me. I mean, I don't have a vehicle, so I really wouldn't like to advise you on that.
No, I meant for them, not for them to drive us, but for them to have a car so that she or he.
Sarah, they would need business insurance.
Yes, that's what I mean. Do we have to pay for that?
No, they have to pay for it to set up as their own PAs.
Right. On their own, we can't.
No,
So
we don't pay, they pay for that sort of thing.
Even PAs?
Yes, even PAs.
All right, then thank you for answering that question for me.
I mean, one thing that I do is that if I'm home late, I will offer to pay for Uber or whatever to get the person home. I don't know if that's a way around it.
You could do that. It depends if they can drive, but if they can drive, then they'd be insured anyway.
Yeah. Presumably if they're driving home, then it's driving home from work like anybody else. But I don't know.
I've got a question. This is probably really a naive question, and I'm really sorry for anyone who who does have a PA or carers, but it just makes me. I'm just curious because of how the relationship. Obviously, there's not always the same consistency with carers that you can build up with PAs, but is it okay? Because I think it is, but I don't know because I've not experienced it. Is it okay to expect the same level of professionalism from a carer as you would from a PA?
Yes, because it's about wording, in my opinion.
It's about, sorry?
It's only about it's about the word you use to, it's about the name of the job title, but carers and PAs are basically the same thing in my opinion.
Oh, I might not agree with that.
Oh, I like the debate.
Yeah, I think first it depends on who is the employer, the carer. They could be self-employed, they could be an agency, both of which make it a different relationship. And so, you know, as I say, my agency carers, in many ways, are brilliant, no different from my PAs. But some of the people that come from the agency are fine, but I wouldn't employ them. I don't know if that cryptically, it's a different relationship, I think, is what I would say. And it depends how you know, if they're being professional and if whoever PA or the carer or whatever is committed to having an enabling relationship with the disabled person, that's the current case. I mean, you can have poor relationship with PA, so it does. It's yeah.
So can I just to clarify, because I suppose from it also depends on who the direct line manager of that employee is. So if it's a carer from an agency, the direct line manager is the agency, not itself. So that maybe sometimes makes it a little bit more convoluted, because you can't necessarily have such a, it's not a direct relationship, is it?
No, because
Okay.
you've got the agency involved as like a third party middleman.
Yeah.
And the agency has a whole level of policies that they have to be mindful of, which I have policies that obviously I'm always mindful of.
I have a care company, and they have their own policies and procedures within the group. So a PA would be a bit more personal centered. You could get away with doing a little bit more or whatever. And so, yeah, because that's my personal care and all the personal care, that is from a care group. So they have their own rules, regulations, policies. Whereas if I'm employing somebody that's not like in a care group, I think that's different.
You still have certain rules you have to follow though, and you still have to give them breaks at a certain time and everything. People think it's easier to employ PAs, but it's in some ways more challenging because you have to be mindful of the rules that like the breaks and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, as a good employer, you have to be mindful of all the legislation around break times and how many working hours and working patterns and holidays, of course, as well. You have to build in that everyone's entitled to 5.6 weeks holiday a year.
Yes, it's actually quite a lot of holiday if you're trying to work a team of 3 PAs.
Yes, we should actually another reason why I like a larger team, just so that I've got built-in slack.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm lucky that I can do that. Doesn't always.
Do you have to have liability insurance? Or if
you do.
Yeah, does that come with the pay, the thing? Or
no, you have to use the money you get as a PA to employ the PAs to buy the liability insurance.
Yeah, in case that they fall with you or they fall or...
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Not that they should be falling with you, but yeah.
Can I possibly ask a question? A slightly different angle, just in my experience. Just when I've used, I guess, I don't know whether they were carers or personal assistants because it was post-surgery. So I guess that they were carers, although I was employing them. I struggled with, but maybe this is me, so what they do in the downtime when you don't actually need them around, but you need to have somebody there. Does that make sense? So, I mean, ridiculous places where I was asking them to sort out cupboards for me because I didn't, they were sort of sitting looking at me, and I found that really difficult when I wanted to rest, to have someone there and feel like you have to kind of keep a conversation or and I didn't really want, I sound very unsociable, it wasn't that.
No, not at all. What I do is just say, go and sit and read your book. I mean, I'm lucky I've got rooms in the house so they can sit in a separate room to me, but there is time. So
do you ever feel maybe this is, you know, that you kind of had to become a little bit hardened to kind of say that, like,
yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
You have to often say, "Go, can you leave the room?" Because it gets a bit much. And they're mine are pretty good, but not. You have to learn to say, "Can you leave the room?" Because otherwise they get really annoying.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And is there any tips in terms of establishing that relationship at the beginning so that you don't constantly feel like you have to apologize or, you know, soften what you're saying? I don't mean that in a...
Sometimes I say to them, sometimes the best thing you can do for me is to go and read your book.
Right.
So that is part of my induction spiel.
And do you have a set induction spiel that you give?
Possibly. I can't remember if I've written it down.
Right. No, I was just wondering if, but there are key things that you share at the beginning. Is there?
Yeah.
Sorry, I just always say bring a book. There might be times when I don't want to talk. There isn't really an induction spiel, but it's always known that they have to kind of self-entertain themselves at some point during the day. Because I'm not that entertaining. I'm not going to start juggling for them.
It was just finding extra jobs that I didn't actually need doing, but I just felt like I needed to use.
Use them while they're staring at you.
Yeah.
Getting us spaces.
I'm just having a look. Oh, did we have some? We did have some hands up, but maybe...
Dean, did you have your hand up? And
yes,
Tony.
I did. I just wanted to basically just to say, that's Tony's got his hand up as well. You know, everything that I'm hearing from different people are all things that I heard Susie say. You know, so you know, about her, and so things like what you just said about actually asking them to leave the room because, like, you don't want them staring. You don't want someone there all the time. You know, and you, I think that Susie used to say, well, I need time to breathe as well. I need time to myself as well. I don't, you know, and it's important to have that space. You know, it's that's what she used to say, and it's I've really enjoyed tonight. It's been good.
Oh, that's good.
Thanks, Dean.
Thanks, Dean. Tony, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, it is a common problem that when you're working in PR and acting as an employer, you're very much working on your own. And yes, there must be a lot of accumulated knowledge that has built up over many years from people's different experiences, that the whole process of employing people ought to become easier despite what you've said earlier. So I'm just curious to know what can be done to provide that peer support and where you get your peer support for, and if you enjoy, you feel part of a wider community of people employing PAs.
Well, it's a great question, and it's quite a sad answer because there used to be loads of disabled people organisations that provided loads, and Bristol Centre for Independent Living used to write this wicked handbook for PA employers, and it covered everything, all the legal forms, it had all the job descriptions, it had all the like different motors. It was just superb, but that's no longer funded. In Camden, we had a what do you call it? PISC, personalisation in Camden support service that was for direct payment users. That's lost its funding. So all the organisations there used to be something called National Centre for Independent Living that was dedicated to, developing policy and good practice around direct payment users. That's no longer funded. So all these things have gone, and it's a shame. But it's great. This sort of community exists and is coming forward. But I do think that disabled people of my vintage, in some ways, had it a lot easier than young people nowadays. And I just bring up, Tony and I were at school together. Debbie, mutual friend of ours. If I have problems, I just ring up Debbie and ask her what she does. So,
yeah, it's a problem I came up 2 weeks ago because Janine was asking about how you go around finding PA, and at the time it really struck me that if you have a community with similar problems, it's really good to be able to share that with them. And I know, since you recommended this, that I this terrible for you advice group, and I did that advice group, Facebook group, and I didn't know about it until you mentioned it, and I wish I knew about it because I've learned so much from being a member of that and participating in that. And as I was looking around for some group of independent living, and there is this independent living UK, independent living UK Facebook group, which I just provide this kind of mutual support, because it's, to me, that is a bit dark that there are people like you who have built up a massive of accumulated knowledge over the time, and yet aren't able to share their insights with many other people.
Tony, I'm just going to bring in Janine really quickly just before the end. But thank you for your really insightful questions. It's really good to know that there is a Facebook group too. Janine, did you want to ask your question?
Yeah, thank you. Hello, Ruth. I just wanted to ask, Tony had mentioned, I've been sort of asking where people find their PAs. I'm really struggling. I've been looking since November, and I'm really struggling to find somebody. I just wondered where you look.
I've really struggled since Brexit. Really difficult. I live in London, so I use Gumtree. Don't know if you know Gumtree.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's not great, but it is fairly. You can get an advert for £39, so that's fairly cheap in the grand scheme of things. Sometimes word of mouth, although that's got pros and cons. Sometimes I've used adverts in shops that's got. It's a difficult one. Where have you tried, Janine?
Mainly PA pool. That's been successful in the past.
But
I'm finding that people want more money than what I have funding for.
Right.
It's really, really difficult. I think you know, my direct payments didn't go up for 12 years. I didn't have an increase at all, and now it has gone up, but it's not enough to keep up with the increased cost of living.
Yeah.
I'm really struggling to find someone. I desperately need someone, but yeah, like I say, I've been looking since November.
What area of the country are you?
Cambridgeshire.
I don't know if it's not Norwich, is it?
No, I'm near Norwich, but it's not. No, it's not.
Because I think Norfolk got a CIL still. Disabled people organisation. But no, if I think of anything, I'll let you know. But unfortunately, I got no. But it's just very, very difficult at the moment.
Yeah. Do you always look for people that have done it before with relevant training, or do you choose to train up your own people and people that perhaps haven't done it before?
Whatever.
Yeah.
Really. Sometimes it's better if they haven't had experience, because then you can give them your experience. Sometimes it's like, oh well, they know what they're talking about. That's quite good.
Yeah.
Janine, I may be talking out of turn because I've never recruited long term, but if this is not the right sort of advice, but I sometimes see people seeking from their community groups, you know, within the community, if somebody who hasn't had experience.
You mean like on community Facebook groups and stuff?
No, like church or synagogue.
Okay, yeah, I've got an advert that's going up in my church, and I've had nothing from it.
Right.
I also put I did put an advert on a local Facebook group, but one person I trialed and it really didn't work out. So I had to get rid of her, and it turned a bit nasty. It wasn't very nice. So that sort of took me off Facebook. And also somebody else came up through Facebook, but I happened to go into a local shop, and the shopkeeper said to me, oh, such and such a person hasn't applied to your advert, have they? And I said, yeah, I recognise that name. And she said, oh, that person's been banned from all the care homes locally.
Right.
So it just made me feel really quite vulnerable, because they're coming into my home and into my personal space, and you know, there's only so much you can tell from an interview. So
I wasn't suggesting Facebook. I'm also but I just sort of meant word of mouth in terms of within your, you know.
No, I've been telling lots of people, because as I say, I've been looking since November, but nothing's come up, unfortunately.
Good luck.
We'll keep thinking. On that note, Ruth, thank you so much for such an insightful conversation this evening. It's been so eye-opening and really, really practical, which is something I love about these sessions. So thank you.